I'm extremely happy to see you all tonight to our Digital Shift event about riding the AI wave in IT development. So what is Digital Shift? Digital Shift is organized by...
Yes, by June and me. Alain.
This is because we are working in IT here in Zurich, and we like the community. As you see, we are totally Swiss on paper, and we love it here, and this is the way that we want to give back to the community. We feel very happy here in Zurich, and we love the people here. So a bit more about us. That's me, I'm the CTO with my technical person, audio technical person, who is now behind at the back. And we are working in AI, and we are thinking about how can people make money with AI. And, oh, I was jumping ahead. Yeah. Why are we doing Digital Shift? You have it already. And we're very happy that we can do it because we have people who help us. That would be Ginetta, who is our host for tonight. That would be Greenleaf and Swiss DevJobs. I'm sure you all know Swiss DevJobs. And tonight is about riding the AI wave. I'm sure you've had all already experienced generative AI and how they can help us with coding, that it makes us faster, hopefully. Tonight, actually, we wanted to have Darko as moderator, but he got sick today. So the new Darko would be me and my colleague behind the screen. And how it works is that I will be doing a short introduction to AI with the words, what is LLM, and so on. And we have Andrew, who will be going a bit more in depth afterwards. We want this event to be a discussion, so no question is a stupid question, because we've got really good people here tonight who can answer all your questions. That would be, we will present them afterwards, sorry. And the host for tonight is Ginetta. They're also sponsoring the apéro afterwards. And one part why we are doing Digital Shift is because we're working in IT and we always need to learn. And we want to share what we've learned with you. So if you've got any questions or any topics you want to go in depth with, we're open. And we always look at the technical things that might have a big wave for all of us. And not, oh, that's a blockchain and it's nice. Everyone is called now blockchain. That's not really what we're after. So if you're interested in anything like that, here is the QR code for anyone who's interested to stay up to date. And these are people who helped us find the speakers for tonight, who had the ideas, and in general, people who helped us.
Thank you, June. I'm here.
You're not coming?
Good evening. So I take the spot of Darko as our host tonight, and June will take the speech Darko was planning to give to you. Short introduction to June. She says about herself that she, first of all, she has a master in information technologies, and she describes herself as an all-rounder with a passion for technology and science. I would say these days she's a masterhead of AI personas and prompt engineering. So if those thematics are of any interest, that's the person to talk to. And June, go ahead.
So now is a short introduction to AI. What is AI? And we have a very short acronym for artificial intelligence, and you can actually understand whatever you want with that, why artificial and what is actually really intelligence. I'm not going to read the term because actually the basic ingredients is what makes it interesting. These are machine learning algorithms. We have then large data training sets. We need good quality of, we need good data, we need enough data, and they have to be in good enough quality. And the people who are doing AI, they need to understand the domain that they're working in. In our view, we think that AI will change business dramatically. First of all, it would make you a lot faster. It would increase the productivity, and with all that, it will also increase your complexity, which makes it a bit difficult to think of all kinds of stuff. If you change something here, it might change something there, or it might change the whole picture, and you have to think about what you're doing. We have a path that AI took in business. We can use AI to improve tasks. We can use AI for processes that we can automate. And the other side of AI is that we can augment, improve existing solutions, and then build proprietary AI solutions. And if you can do something like that, then you're a so-called AI-first company. And we got a very good quote from Ivo Betik, who said, it's an acronym for artificial intelligence, but it's actually a very broad term that means that a machine can perceive, synthesize, and infer information just like a human would. Actually, can think of AI like your intern or secretary, or a lot of interns that you can tell, please do this stuff, this stuff, this stuff, but it's a lot faster than a human, and it never gets tired. So for tonight, this is what expects you, what you can expect, sorry. We have Andrew Bredenkamp, who would give us an introduction of how AI would change our lives. The focus tonight is about IT development and AI, how AI is used in IT development, and if you can use AI not only in coding, but also in QA, in testing, maybe also UX. And perhaps the most important thing is the AI wave, that the AI might change the software development niche or vertical, and we want to see what changes we can expect.
I would welcome Andrew. Andrew has a PhD in language AI. He's experienced in tuning ideas into impact and revenue. So that sounds great, so go ahead, thank you.
So, yes, I'm not going to talk too much about the details of using AI in any particular platforms or environments. I'm not going to get too technical. I'm going to more look at it from a perspective of what the technology can do, where does it come from, where is it, and for my particular interest is what's it good for. So I'm going to try and give a bit of perspective as to where I think this is heading, and how it will impact us, possibly also beyond our working lives. A little bit about me. I've been in AI, I didn't realize this until I did the sums, but probably been in AI for almost 30 years now, starting with a PhD in the UK and then a brief 5 years in Germany, and since 2006 roughly in Switzerland. I founded and ran an AI company, a language AI company based in Berlin. We used to say we sold AI to AI companies, so selling to Google and Facebook, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft and others, foundational AI technologies and products built on that. I exited that in 2019, and since then I've been active mainly as an investor, as an advisor, mainly in the tech space, some language AI stuff, and other tech-related companies. And most of the time I spend actually on AI for social impact. which anyone wants to ask me after the break. I won't talk about it today. But the way in which AI can be used in ways which, first of all, don't have the kind of social impact, negative social impact, but also may also have some positive social impact. We could talk all day about the risks and dangers of AI, so I'm not going to talk about that today particularly, but there is also a huge positive impact that AI can have if it's done properly. So I'm trying to get behind some of those kinds of initiatives. So I get asked this a lot. Is AI the end of humanity? Several famous people, much smarter than me, have said it probably is. And I think it's just interesting to think through a little bit what that might actually mean and play through some scenarios. The most interesting way to think about this is, I think, to just think through how do we think this could happen? And as soon as you challenge people to say, well, how would this AI lead us to the end of humanity? It all gets a bit vague and it gets pushed out to even further out into the future. So a lot of the following slides will be presented in this kind of format, unfortunately, where I'm thinking, on the one hand, I think it is potentially dangerous. It is, from a point of view of the society and the way in which we deal with this, a dangerous, potentially dangerous, risky thing that we have to learn how to deal with. At the same time, especially speaking as someone who's been doing AI since before AI was a thing and became a thing in 2017, it actually looks quite incremental. And you sort of say, well, actually, we've been dealing with technological changes as the human race for since technology arrived in the beginning of the 20th century, maybe. And if you look at the way in which society has developed, none of these amazing disasters have happened. Why would this one suddenly be the one where, but this one really is serious? There have been lots of interesting stories, analogies driven between, like, when electricity first arrived in the 30s. Everyone was going, well, electricity is going to kill you. It's all, and we don't know how it's going to work, and it's going to be very dangerous, and everyone's going to be out of a job, and all of these things come up over and over again. And of course, electricity, we just learned to deal with it, and there were enormous creative, positive things that came out of that for humanity, some negative things, but overall it was a positive thing. I'm generally very optimistic as a person, and I tend to think this won't be as, it's never going to be as bad as the worst pictures tell you. Similar sort of story if you look more disruptive, lots of people, I spend a lot of time in the language AI business talking about translation, where I talk to translators, and they say, so machine translation is coming along and it's going to put us all out of a job, and how's it going to be? This discussion has been going on for maybe 15 years, long before LLMs and this generation of AI, and there has been no significant change in levels of employment or levels of work around translation. There are now billions and billions of words translated with machine translation without noticeably putting translators out of work. There are similar cases, if you look back in history, of change when digital telephone exchanges were first invented, when elevators were first invented. People were running these things, right? And gradually we learned to do without the people, but it didn't mean we had all the people who had been working the lifts were suddenly out of jobs. They found something else to do. So I think, again, it will be disruptive, and I'll try and talk about some of the ways in which I think that disruption will happen, but I think it won't be as disruptive as putting people out on the street in unemployment, sort of disruptive. When LLMs first came out, so some of the people who worked on the original transformer architecture used to work for me, so I've sort of followed the development of LLMs from the very beginning, and it's hard not to think of how primitive they are in lots of ways. So we all know, everyone knows how LLMs work, right? Generally. Anyone? Yeah. So there's a couple of interesting things about it which I think are really important. First of all, it's just predicting the next word, right? Goal in some sort of goal, but it's just basically predicting the next word. And to some extent, you can think of this then as a very simple trick, which we've then worked really hard to harness into something that then creates these applications. And I say applications, most of the things you see are simply demos. They don't yet have applications. They're not yet tied to a real business need. But at some level, it's easy to get blown away because of what you see, that you think there's some magic created in there. And I'll talk a bit more about this later on in the talk, but I think it's important when you're playing with these things to remember how basic this is still as what we might call artificial intelligence. And when this came along, there were lots of huge claims by the leaders of LLMs that, or the leading developers of LLMs, that we'd finally sort of cracked it and we were on our way to creating general intelligence. And I think, I would distance myself quite strongly from those, and I think a lot of those people have since distanced themselves from it. So I think what we have now is AI, amazing though it is not the path to general intelligence. It's not the path to HAL or one of those AIs that we know from the cinema. It's just a super interesting technology. I couldn't resist this. This was so the spell checker, right, was kind of the first AI that people will have seen in terms of language AI. It's helping you correct your words. We weren't particularly blown away with that, even though it was actually generative AI. It was generating suggestions and things. One of the first salespeople we had in the US used to go out and say that what we do is spell checker on steroids, which we used to hate because it's just a crazy term. But there's a little bit of truth in that. If you think about this, trying to keep your feet on the ground and think this is just another technology, it's just like a spell checker. And, no one was saying all the dictionary manufacturers are going to be put out of work because now we've got a spell checker. It's similar at a slightly different level to that kind of change, that disruption that we're waiting. I think another important factor is the incremental nature of this. So this doesn't happen like suddenly we don't have AI and then 2017 there's Transformers and then we do have AI. AI has been developing for a long, long time, started maybe in the 50s really, went through a lot of different generations, and there's never a point where you can say we didn't have AI and now we do. If you look at the way, just since LLMs came along, 2017, the way that, for instance, GitHub have supported the use of AI in development platforms. They started out with simple code support, so you could get better completion, AI-supported completion, and little bits of coding as you were writing code. They then moved to something which I think they called chat, which was the ability to write a prompt saying, write me a website that creates a login page for an app and a database or whatever, where you could ask it something. And then now they've moved to this thing called Workspace, which is sort of allowing you to do architecting. So you can sort of put in specifications and say, I want an application that does this, and it will build all the pieces for it. So what we can see is gradually, in collaboration with humans, I think it's super important to always think of AI as being a collaborative agent for people to work with. Rather than replacing them, it's a tool like a spell checker or a screwdriver or a computer that you can use in order to make yourself more productive. And what I mean by productive is not better at writing code, but more productive as in you move up a level. You're not doing the boring tasks you were doing before, you're doing something at a higher level of abstraction. So if you think about this in terms of architecting, one of the guys from GitHub said there won't be as many programmers, there will be more systems thinkers, whatever that means. But I guess what they mean is architecting, right? So you're thinking about what's this application supposed to do, who's it for, and as you write those things down, which you probably would have done anyway, you don't have to go through the process of translating that into code. The system can do that for you. The AI can do that for you. And so this is similar to the people who were pressing the button in the lift for you when you were going up and down in the lift. You no longer need someone to press the button. You can either press it yourself, or now you can speak to the lift and tell it where you're going, and it will do it for you. And what's, I think, really important is to not think of this as a replacement event, but as something which will expand our possibilities. So Jeff Hinton, who's sometimes annoyingly called the godfather of AI, he made some of the breakthroughs in machine learning, for deep learning specifically, but in no sense is he the godfather of AI. But he made a few ridiculous claims, and he's made a few more ridiculous claims since then. So he's great on AI, but don't ask him about anything else. But he said famously in 2016, so just before LLMs came out, we should stop training radiologists now because it's obvious that in 5 years, so 2021, deep learning is going to be better than radiologists. Really stupid comment for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it shouldn't, this idea that we should replace humans with the AI is, I think, fundamentally wrong. But secondly, these things never go as quickly as this, right? You imagine how many radiologists there are in the world and how long it will take patients to get comfortable with the idea of asking an AI to look at their x-rays and decide whether they've got cancer or not. This is just never going to happen, or not never going to happen. It's going to take a long time for patients to accept the changes that are coming in it. Radiologists are fundamentally not perfect at analyzing x-rays, and there's this idea that somehow people are better than, people are perfect, and what the AI has to do is get to perfect, and then it will be good enough to be as good as the humans. And I think that's another fundamental sort of mistake in the way we think about these things, and I've got a slide on it in a minute. But quite often when we think about translation, or we think about oncologists interpreting x-rays, we need to look at how good humans are at doing these things and evaluate whether the AI might be better than the humans. By the way, between 2016 and 2021, US radiology employment went up by 3%. So the AI has not had any noticeable effect on radiology. So I think everyone in the industry was amazed at what LLMs could do, and continue to be amazed at it, especially, and I'll come to this in a minute, because we don't actually know how it works. Nobody knows how these things actually do what they do, because they're no longer inspectable. They're basically there are too many layers. But it can do amazing things. This is a haiku about AI and software engineering or something. Anyway, it was done by one of the LLMs. So it's amazing, but you'll all know that it's not very clever, right? So you may have seen these. The LLMs were really dumb at the beginning. They've got a lot smarter, but this is a thing from last week. I tried this with a few other engines. The comeback, so the asking questions, is really interesting. So if it gets the answer right, coincidentally, it might get the answer right. These things are non-deterministic, right? So they won't always give you the same answer. It might get it right. If you then say, really, are you sure? Then it will often tell you why it's got the answer wrong, even though it has got the answer right. In this case, this screen grab is like somewhat getting it wrong. But you can see the fact that this is where you rapidly see that there's no intelligence here that we would call intelligence that can do even the basic things like counting an instance of something in a list. So there's that sort of amazing wonder at the amazing things it can do, writing poems in French, sonnets and stuff, and then this. One interesting thing, one of the authors of the transformative paper said this to me, and I've always carried it with me since then, is that we're moving into an era of engineering as opposed to science. So for a long time, AI was driven by science. We knew how everything worked, and we could tweak everything, and we were building on a solid basis of this science and then developments of that science. And some of that science continues in sense of thinking about changing the way the algorithms work. But in terms of LLMs and anything built on LLMs, we're really moving from science to engineering. And what I mean by that is it's a bit like making glass. So if you're interested, you can Google, there's a really good article on this. If you Google Vox glass science, nobody knows how glass is made, right? They know how to make it, but they don't know how it actually forms and how it is constructed. And so if they want to make a different glass, it's just like you're in the kitchen playing with, oh, I'll add a bit of this and a bit of that, and I'll heat it to that temperature, and I'll cool it more quickly. But it's just purely empirical, right? Nobody knows how to make a different glass or how exactly glass works. And that's kind of where we are with AI. So nobody knows how it really works, and there's some really interesting work going in how to make it a bit more transparent and a bit more inspectable, but we're not there, we're a long way from there yet. And so you have to think of this very much in terms of trial and error. And I know teams that are working on the latest and greatest chat bots in big tech, and I think you'd be amazed at how empirical it is, right? So how much of the magic, the LLM magic is wrapped in so much, engineering. So that's something I think that's important to bear in mind, and certainly impacts the way in which this technology is going to roll out. It's not going to be so easy to just deploy it as a technology. So a little bit summing up this bit. I think it's just a tool, and one which every engineer needs to know how to use. Just the last bit on AGI. So for quite a long time, people have been talking about singularity or sort of general intelligence, whatever that means. And I defy anyone to give me a good definition of what AGI actually means. In some senses, it's just around the corner, and in other senses, I can see it as far away as it ever was. There's still some things that are a long way away in terms of cognitive abilities that we see. At the same time, I'm much more interested in applications than algorithms, so I'm always interested in what can we do with this stuff we have now. This is from 2016, Tesla. And all this is trying to do, the red thing, is trying to keep the car between the lines on the road. Now, they've been better than humans at that since 2016. So all this is saying, like the oncologist, where you might say that's a bit more nuanced, but this has one job, right? And it can do it better than humans, because humans are reading their mail or changing the music or looking out of the window or arguing with their passengers or whatever. The AI in a Tesla just does this one thing, keeping you in lane. And I think there's a lot of truth in that in terms of how we think about even large LLM-based AI solutions. Instead of them being able to do everything, which is what big tech sort of wants to present us as that will happen, that they'll be able to do everything, it's much more likely that niche solutions will be built based on these things, where Actually, the weather forecasting is one of the things that's going to happen soon. DeepMind is already better than most meteorological models on the planet that were built with the old machine learning approaches. So there's all sorts of areas where niche products will be built, niche solutions will be built that will be better than state of the art. But it's almost not interesting to think about when will the AI be like a human. And what would that even mean, right? The same? Well, they make mistakes. They won't make the same mistakes, and they'll probably make fewer. Why would they make the same ones? That's sort of the issue. Why do we want to make the AI be like a human? It's a thing. It's not a replacement for a human. There's another way of thinking about this. The way the AI is expanding, the brain ultimately obeys the laws of physics, right? So inside here, there's a lot of chemistry, but there's quite a lot of physics in our heads, the thing that's in our heads that allows us to think. It's been calculated, and I'm taking this as, I have no idea whether this is true or not, but I've asked some people, that our brains are capable of approximately 1 exaflop, which is a very big number. The question is, why would we stop there, right? Why, if a machine could do 2, wouldn't that be better than 1? This is, you've all seen those pictures of the computer that fits in a room like this, that was, that was water cooled and everything, and is now we can do the same amount of calculations with our phones. Well, this is a 1 exaflop computer. They currently exist. This is brand new from like 3 months ago. This, I think, is the 2nd or 3rd most powerful computer on the planet. But this is currently equal, roughly, by that simple, crude calculation, roughly equal to a human brain in terms of its ability to calculate. What it can't do is all of the other stuff that the brain does. But in terms of computing power, we're not very far away. And you can be sure that in 10 years' time, this will fit in my pocket. So that's where we're heading, right? Just in terms of compute power, that doesn't give us the algorithms and the approaches and the stuff we need to make this thing work. But we're now at the point, which people have been remarkably quiet about, but we're now at the point where we can build a hardware version of a brain, which we couldn't do, right? You all know LLMs were only possible. The maths for LLMs is really, really old, right? It only became practicable to do it once we had GPUs. So these things are happening. As the hardware comes along, the software will follow it. There's a guy called Nick Bostrom who talked about this in an interesting way, which is to think about cognitive entities and the AI's journey through it. So he talked about, there'd be a mouse, and then there'd be a chimp, and then there would be like the most stupid person in the village. Very shortly after that very stupid person in the village, there would be Ed Witten, who is, he's won the Field Medal for maths. He's commonly acknowledged as one of the candidates for the smartest person on the planet. And the point he made was, why would the AI stop there? Right? Why is our expectation that once we get to that point, then we're done? Right? This idea of singularity, that we get to that point and then AI is as good as us, it's not going to stop there. It's going to continue in all sorts of interesting ways. And then, it does start to get interesting as to the discussion of, can we switch it off? What larger goals do we get it so that it doesn't decide that we're superfluous and that, that there's no, it can get on without us? What would it get on with doing? One of the issues with AI is, of course, that it doesn't have innate goals. It has our goals currently that we give it, but very soon it will start to be sophisticated enough to develop its own goals, and what might they be, and how would we have a conversation with it about those goals and negotiate in some way and teach it maybe some morals and some principles and things. All of these are coming. but they're coming from a point of view of, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we already have the hardware. I wouldn't be surprised if we had the software to go past humans, you know, in 5-10 years. That's what we need to get used to. Enjoy the ride.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very interesting, and I think it raised a lot of questions. I would suggest that we get the panel people up. You stay with us on the panel. Yeah, you just put it behind. And so we get the panel people up here, and so then we go straight into the discussion. So can I have Mike and Laurent, Komal, Ivo, and Ansuya up to the stage, please? Just take a seat. Good. So to warm up a little bit, I would suggest that you start, you just tell just briefly what you do in your company, what's your function, and what is the biggest impact in 2 sentences you expect? You personally. Yeah, from the wave. Yeah.
Sure. My name is Laurent. I'm one of the co-founders of Holy Code. Co-founded a couple of startups. Some of them were quite successful, some of them obviously not. Now we're devoted to software development for startups and scale-ups mainly, with around 420 employees. My job is co-CEO and CFO, so I'm probably the least techie person on here. Not sure why I ended up here. I honestly don't know yet what to expect of AI. If you ask me on a good day, I think it will change everything. If you ask me on a bad day, it's just another tool. Fantastic, thank you very much. What it changed already is all my car traveling now is very fun, because I use ChatGPT to have conversations about things that I'm thinking about the whole time, and I get home and I'm super stoked. So that's the biggest change for me at the moment.
Thank you. Just hand over.
Hi everyone, I'm Ansuya. I'm the CTO and partner at 33 with Mike, who's sitting over there. And we basically run an IT services company, so we build software applications and now focusing more and more on building applications with AI. I would say like the biggest impact we've already seen and will continue to see is what was spoken about earlier, is like the team building and developing more as system thinkers. So a lot of the sort of mundane day-to-day tasks, even, I mean, especially when it comes to creative work, we all anyway see that with ChatGPT, but also in terms of what we build and how we build it is a lot faster and more efficient. And I think that that's just going to keep happening as we proceed further with AI.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Komal. I work at Ginetta, which is the lovely office you're in, so I get to be in the space every day. I'm currently an MD, and what we do on a daily basis is we use human-centered design to build digital experiences for corporates and scale-ups that are web and mobile friendly. One of the things that I expect also with the AI wave is I think a lot of emphasis is going to be placed on things like business model innovation and things that are taking away from the actual technical development of products and services. So a lot more of the emphasis on the human side of things and adoption and scaling applications out there, because I think a lot of the technical tasks can be automated, as mentioned, and a lot of the out-of-the-box solutions can be easily scaled. So that's one of the big things that I expect. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Ivo. I'm a partner and coder of Unique. I have no title because we are completely self-organized. Sorry about that. We are about 300 people who we are a so-called digital agency. And I'm much more unrelaxed than Andrew. For me, it's not just another tool or other technology. It's, on my point of view, it's a social change. And if you say what's the biggest change for us, is that we will not provide the same services in 5 years as we do today. And that's alarming enough.
Thank you. So I hope you're warmed up, and so I'm curious to know what questions you have.
Hey, I'm Thomas. I'm an emerging AI expert. So everybody gets super excited about ChatGPT and the things you can do, and then you talk at the dinner party about it, and you try to trump each other who does the better thing. But very few of those things actually integrate at this point in time into an actual workflow beyond this very specialized software. I think Copilot of Microsoft tries to do that stuff, but whatever model they use, it's kind of crap at this point in time, so it doesn't do what they promise. When do you think this starts to go a bit more mainstream, that I have like everyday use directly without 15 media breaks where I need to copy from Perplexity to ChatGPT back to Outlook, back to whatever, that because there you lose 80% of the users who are not at least somewhat tech savvy, and that productivity revolution is not going to happen unless this gets weaved together much better than it is today. Thank you.
Who likes to? Mike?
Can I ask you a follow-up question? What's the use case where you transfer from one application to another to another?
Oh, you do the research in one place because Perplexity is at this point in time superior and has a real-time access to data, and then you take the ChatGPT to turn it into some kind of a message you want to get to somebody, or you use it as a training bot if you negotiate with somebody, and then you put the output from there back into Outlook, which you send to whomever is there, and then you maybe try to get it back into OneNote or Google Docs or whatever to archive it. This is a process you could technically automate in one central platform if it's all weaved together. So that's just an example I just made up.
So I would just maybe add to that I think that this is a solution that big tech companies will solve, like we see with Gemini being integrated into the Google workspace. I don't know if you've looked at that. But what they're trying to do is essentially do this part, right? Like where you can have AI in your Google Sheets, you can have it in your email, you can have it with your docs to make calculations, to write things, to do actions on those tools. So the point is that that's big tech companies have the money and the resources to buy out innovation that's going to happen in smaller companies and integrate it into the systems so that people end up using those tools more and more. Because having siloed tools, I agree, is not going to be very productive. So I see that more happening in terms of integrating it with bigger tech companies.
Any prediction what's kind of the time frame? Because Amazon Q just got ripped into pieces in the press this week after they had their Zurich event. That's coincidental, but it just seems not there yet to get this integrated. Well, super impressive.
You're very right, and what we also face is the fact, we call it the AI chaos we have right now, because what we really need is a single point of access. Now the problem is Google will not solve it. Apple will not solve it. Microsoft will not solve it. Because if you're a service company, how many of you have the problem that you have about 6 different teams, logins and stuff, and you get crazy about it because it mixed up and it doesn't work anymore, and you reset the whole stuff? Because they all, of course, the big ones, they will come up with a solution, but then you're a Google or an Apple or an Amazon or whatever. The problem is to switch between these big entities and these big solutions. I think that's the big challenge we will face.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand a bit of the context. So when ChatGPT was released, lots of people talked about it as if it was a product. They used the word product a lot, but it wasn't a product, right? It was a demo. It was basically, we've done this thing, we don't know what it's for, but isn't it interesting? Well, have a look. Right? They literally said that. That's what they went out with. Meanwhile, Google had been developing conversational technologies of various kinds. They had LLMs, obviously. They invented them to some extent, at least the architecture for it. And they had this. They hadn't got themselves ready with a product or something they were ready to go with because they were worried about the reputational risk of all of the stuff that has since happened because they got rushed to it. But that's the context that we were in. So I think no one has developed what you would actually call a product yet. There was then this massive scramble with huge amounts of venture capital flowing in to try and make products building on this technology. But we're in the middle of that. It's a very, very messy process. And it's dangerous to think, not dangerous, I'm as impatient as you are, but it's unhelpful to think of this as, where's my product? Because that's not where we are, right? We're at the very early stage of building some demos and then trying to work out how they're useful.
Thanks. And I think we also have to face the fact that if you just think about, they have spent billions into OpenAI. And I would guess, I haven't been there personally, but I would guess some of these investors one day came in, he said, what the fuck? What kind of applications do we get? Who the hell will make something? Get out there, show them how to do. Because I'm sure that many of the developer companies didn't have a clue what the hell to do with this GPT platform. And so the easiest way to push it into the market is to make a chat and get it rolling out and get the people interested. And now they start understanding, well, not even understanding as Andrew said, but get an idea, what's going on there. And so we are really at a very early stage. Any other questions?
I think one place where we see a lot of applications being deployed at the moment is medtech, is medicine. I was last week, I think, was at an event where we were coaching 13 startups from the medtech space, and I was getting there like, oof, medtech. I know software, but that's a different field. I think from the 13, 12 were actually AI topics. So there's a lot of applications that are happening, but it's obviously very niche ones, but they still have tremendous value in what they deliver. And they're probably not going to be more than a niche, each of them, for a long, long, long time. But the improvements that those things are already bringing are crazy. It's just that the cycles until they're allowed to actually roll this out and get past the second and third tests, clinical trials, whatever that they need to do are very long. But I think all the areas where you have a lot of data and you have very specific use cases, what they need to be able to do, are going to be run over in the next 1 to 3 years, depending on how fast they're going to be allowed to hit the market. But that was really mind-blowing because 2 years ago we had the same thing and there was not a single AI case in that medtech area. Now there's 12 out of 13, and sure, not all of them are going to make it. But the reality is that even on the first clinical trials that they did, I think it was 10 of them were already better than the humans. So amazing numbers to see. So yeah, I guess for us as normal users of AI applications, they're not there yet, but there's a lot of areas where I see that actually we're already quite deep into it at this point.
But I have a question about IT development, because we are actually doing this for IT development. I wonder how much faster, how much more productivity we would have, or is it really, what I'm thinking is, are we 10 times faster, or are we only 10% faster? What are your thoughts? Panel, please.
3 times is a number I keep hearing.
Ivo, please.
I think it's so difficult to say a number. I can say anything. I can be right or wrong. I think the much more interesting question is, what do we do with the productivity gain? And that's the big discussion we currently have. We can be 30% faster. What do we do with this 30% faster? Do we go home? Do we increase value at client side? Do we get bored? Do we increase our revenue or profit?
Could it be that it will change the task lists so that those kind of just coding jobs gonna be automated, so they're not in Petersburg and Vietnam and all these places anymore? I would expect that more jobs and more tasks will be done here in Switzerland, even if we have a high pricing area. But because those things go automatically, it's cheaper to do them here and have a direct control than going somewhere abroad. So I would expect that the architecture and the globalization, how code is made, will change dramatically. That's what I would expect.
So I would just like to also share how I've seen programming change over the years. So when I started and we were writing code in C, C++ for any of the coders out there, you had to write 500 lines of code to do a very simple problem. And when Python came out, for me it was like a big thing. I was like, oh my God, I can write code in English language. And now that 500 lines got replaced to a 1 line with a efficient library that can do the same thing. I didn't stop coding because Python came out. I still continued to code. So I feel like we started to build more complex things faster. And now a lot of people can, you know, with low code, no code, they can spin up all kinds of web apps in a very short amount of time. In a recent video I watched from the former Google CEO, Eric Schmidt, he talked about how we're going to go into a future in about 5 years from now where you're going to have AI agents coding for you. So you're going to just write them, build me XYZ, whatever, like he talked about having a workspace. And the AI agents will start talking to each other. So my AI agent is talking to your AI agent to build things. And then the whole discussion of legal and ethical topics will start to come up, because then it's like, but then how do we pull the plug? And he himself was not able to kind of answer that question, which was interesting for me to hear. But his point of view was that this would happen in 5 years. Personally, I don't really think that would happen in 5 years, but it's interesting to see that this is what the community thinks is the future.
I think it's all about computer power, and Andrew, you just showed it. You know, as more computer power we have, the more complex we can go. And as cheaper those computer powers, I mean, just imagine what you do today on an M4 on your Mac. I mean, you know, you had a cluster on Google and you were waiting half an hour, and now it just goes like this. So that is something which drives. And then I would wonder whether companies would be open enough that their agents are allowed to talk to each other. You know, so that's the question. So if Google has a good idea, would my Google talk with Microsoft and with Apple and all that? So, you know, how big will be the barriers between those to protect themselves?
What I wanted to add on your point from before is, we started using no code a lot lately, because a lot of the startups we work with, they come to us and they're like, oh, I have this great idea, I want to build this application. They're super fired up, and then they're like, yeah, my budget is 5K. Okay, we're in Switzerland, this is going to cost you 80 to 100,000, come back when you have investors, right? Super boring. So using no code, we're now able to deliver to all of them a working prototype with 5 to 10K, every single one. So what we're actually doing is we're just building much more than we used to. Much smaller, we need to be much more efficient at what we're doing, but we get a lot more products and apps shipped that can be tested in the market. And I think what will happen mostly is we're just going to build much more with much less resources. And it's going to be interesting to see what then happens out of that in the future. And yeah, probably in a year from now, whatever we are now doing with no code is going to be dead, because, or in 2 years or in 3 years, I don't know, because AI will do it for us. Okay, but I think the reality is just we're going to build much more as a society.
Just to add to that, I think technical product managers are going to see the biggest benefits with AI adoption, because it's kind of like a pair programmer that allows you to expedite any rule-based programming language. All of the stuff that's quite adaptive, I think it's going to stick with the human.
Yeah. Sure. So we have a last question here.
Yeah, first the learning, and maybe something to enthuse you for. About a week ago, ChatGPT seduced me into getting back to a bit of coding, where I did C++ 1,000 years ago. And now I gotten to this point where I can write Python code without actually coding. So the thing about the coders being eliminated, or what Amazon now does with this step change, I think it's called, where you graphically can do things, I think that will dramatically change the coders on the nearshore offshore side, but also enable many of the people who are not that technical to do a bit of coding in a really elegant way. The question, back to a bit of the policy thing, and I'm curious about opinions, there are no right or wrong answers, but the EU, Switzerland gets pretty strong about regulation, consumer protection, and it's very honorable. The US is less. China, India might not give a flying flip about it. Are we pricing ourselves out of the market by being more protective of the consumer versus other places innovate faster, stronger, and accept maybe massive collateral damage? But what does it mean for us? We might be very well regulated, but if that's the only innovation we produce in Europe, kind of screwed.
Yeah, good question.
Don't you see that as an opportunity to be building good social AI and applications that help us, and it's not just optimized for one variable for getting the most cash flow, for example? Regulations is not just, oh, it's limiting us, it's making us slow. It's all, like all limitations that you have to get a bit more creative and more innovative in how you do the stuff. Just like Steve Wozniak when he did the first, what was it, LISA? Don't you see that?
But the question if the others that compete with us in Europe don't do that, or don't have to do it. Very few really large tech successes come out of Europe the last 10, 15 years. I mean, Spotify is one that became really big, but most of the really big ones don't come out of Europe, and I find that unfortunate.
That's true. Well, I think maybe we end up with 50 pages of non-disclosure if you like to buy your new iPhone or Samsonite, because you have to agree that EU says that, but then you wipe it and you agree that may do different. We will see how that comes. I think it's a question a little bit on the market and on the economy side. You know, if the pressure is big enough, then we may change backwards or in another direction. Who knows? It's a lot of politics involved there. So,
but I have one last question, because I think it's still important. If we're having such much 30% productivity gain, like Ivo said, doesn't that mean that the business model will change for us IT guys? Or does it not mean that we as IT guys are the enablers for the whole business world, that the business world thinks, everything changes, they are 30% too expensive, for example? I would really love to hear your opinions.
No, I just want to say a quote. I think Peter Thiel said this, that the future of AI means that engineers who have math skills won't have any jobs, but the ones who have soft skills will. And that's all I want to say to this question.
okay, thank you. Maybe we make a last sentence for everybody. You just start.
Yeah, I just want to give you my perspective on this. I hate regulation, not all of it, but a lot of it. And I don't think that regulation is what's going to kill Europe on the AI part. There's a lot of other factors that we've been fumbling in the last 15, 20 years compared to US that we first need to address, and then we should also talk about regulation. But I don't think it's the one that we should talk too much about, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Here you go. I think what I wanted to answer your question, I agree with you 100%. Soft skills are not going anywhere. And when it's evergreen or rule-based content or tasks or structures or processes, I think AI can really augment your speed in that area. But when it's anything dynamic or adaptive, that's, I think, where the human wins big time.
Thanks.
I think we shouldn't care too much about regulation. And I don't want to break the law. But I think we care too much about it. We have no clue yet what that means, and we have to try out. And I see us asking so many questions, and my answer would be, you're invited to give any idea how you would handle it, because we don't know yet. I mean, what you said also about the whole tooling, it was fascinating. A guy explained that, you know, this AI stuff in coding is great, but just for private stuff. Because there I can do anything.
Yes.
But here in the company, I'm working, for example, for a pharma company, insurance company. I have so many regulations. I have Jira, Confluence, Slack, Teams, need to talk to people, doesn't increase my speed. I agree, but what's your proposal? I mean, it will just get faster, crazier. I was happy about when you said these great computers will be in the pocket in some months or years. I mean, it will just speed up. So yes, I have many questions as well. For every question I get, I have 3 more, but we have to tackle them and find out and be brave and don't think too much about all this EU Act stuff. Like.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree. I think the regulation is a pain in the neck usually. I'm not a big fan of it, but I think we do need it. We do need to have frameworks for these things, largely to protect consumers, sometimes from themselves. But I would agree, I don't think that's what's holding Europe back from creating the same kinds of companies that are created in the US and China. The big advantage they have, both China and the US, is they have a huge single market that they can go after in one language, one jurisdiction, in one go.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. And if you look at India, which has huge tech capabilities, they haven't been able to do it either for the same reason. So, I think we're being hard on ourselves if we think that it's all down, why haven't we done it? A huge part of it is the diversity that we have here that we don't have in other regions. So I would agree. I think we just need to get on with it.
Thank you very much. Let me make one last sentence. We're talking about AI and the wave and everything, but just to remember, some of you don't remember, some maybe remember or don't even know. Simon Pepper and Mario Minsk were in the 50s, the first people at the MIT Media Lab, as it was named at that time, and they had the first AI thoughts and ideas and concepts. And believe me, we have not even scratched 50% of the ideas they had in the 1950 yet. So there is a lot to come. And I would invite you, we have a little buffet, a little aperitif, and I would invite you to share all your ideas and questions with the board and everybody here and do the networking. June?
I'm very happy that we actually ended on a high note, that us programmers are always needed. You just have to learn soft skills. Soft skills, you can learn them in apero. Start tonight.